Hey, everyone, and welcome to the Academy Insider podcast. Today, I'm joined by Karl Smith, who's a two-time Service Academy parent. He had a son, Noah, from the class of 2020, and a daughter, Kate, who's currently going through the Air Force Academy. And in this episode, we talk all about the parent journey, the parent experience from plebe year all the way to the end and commissioning and beyond in his relationship with his son in the fleet. So if you're getting ready to start Plebe Summer, or you just have a son or a daughter who is at the Naval Academy or is going to the Naval Academy or is interested in the Naval Academy, I think you'll really enjoy this episode because we touch all on the relationship dynamic between a parent and a midshipman. We talk about the best ways to support your son or daughter, the ways to approach difficult conversations, and we talk about the experience at large, kind of with the main message of being your experience is the right experience. That is what you're going to get out of this episode, is that you don't have to match a certain mold of going through the academy. There are going to be a million different experiences, a ton of people who have different thoughts and opinions on how to do this. And we just want to let you know that your experience is the right experience. So if you're interested in hearing our conversation, I encourage you to take a listen. I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And if you ever have any questions for me or Karl on this podcast, feel free to shoot me a message at Academy Insider, and we'll make sure to get you taken care of. So thank you so much. I hope you have a great day and enjoy the episode. The Academy Insider podcast is sponsored by the Vermeer Group, a residential real estate company that serves the United States Naval Academy community and other select clientele in both California and Texas. If I can ever answer a real estate related question for you or connect you with a trusted Academy affiliated agent in the market which you're in, please reach out to me directly at grant@thevermeergroup.com. You can also reach out to me on my LinkedIn page, Grant Vermeer, and I'd be happy to respond to you there. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider podcast. Karl, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. For anyone who may not know Karl, first off, we just got to get you back to an old Academy Insider episode in which Karl joined us. This is round 2 on the podcast. But for anyone who may not know you, do you mind just giving a little bit of context and background about yourself and your children and where they're at?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Grant. Great to be back, by the way. Happy to see Academy Insider 2.0. So my son Noah entered the Academy in 2016, so he commissioned in 2020. I started writing a blog, My Kid, the Mid, about a year and a half into that experience. I've been maintaining that ever since, still active. My daughter Kate entered the Air Force Academy prep school in 2020 and is now a second class airman at the second class cadet, at the Air Force Academy, and she'll be commissioning in 2025.
Very cool. And Noah, what's he doing now out in the fleet? Exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of what is he up to?
Yeah, so he's a Lieutenant JG on the USS Florida, which is a guided missile submarine out of Kings Bay. He's on his 3rd deployment. I don't think this is violating OPSEC, since it's pretty obvious to anybody. They're in Guam right now. We're getting ready for their next deployment, doing maintenance. So, and this will be his last deployment with the Florida, and he'll go to shore duty after that, which will be, I'm sure, a whole nother chapter of learning and excitement for all of us.
Semper Deep. Semper Deep.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much again for joining us today. And for everyone listening, the premise of today's episode is really going to be all about the parent journey and the parent overall experience at the Naval Academy. And what I'm so excited about now is re-engaging in this conversation genuinely about 5 years after the original conversation is now you have a little bit of perspective and you have a comparison to your daughter's experience at the Air Force Academy.
Yeah.
And so I kind of want to just jump back to the original conversation we had, in which case you talked a little bit about Noah, worrying about Noah becoming completely engulfed in the military lifestyle, and your perspective as a parent and realizing, hey, I'm about to probably, for lack of a better term, lose my kid, right? And turn him over to the military lifestyle. Now with that perspective, do you believe that to be the case? How is your relationship with Noah after dropping him off at Plebe Summer and going through and continuing now into the fleet?
Yeah. Well, it has changed, and I'd say it's changed dramatically, and I don't say that in a negative context. And I think most parents would say that's what happens when your kids start to adult.
Sure.
Right. But the military thing, and this is, I've referenced this before. Your time as an academy parent prepares not just your child to be in the fleet; it prepares you to have a child in the fleet.
Yep.
So limited contact with them, for example, that becomes a thing. So you kind of get used to that. When my son's a submariner, so that means they're semper deep. That means you're not going to hear from them for months on end at times. And frankly, it was kind of like that at the Naval Academy. So in that way, it's the same. And So I think that would be the main thing I'd say is you do the he has embraced the military lifestyle. I think what he's learning though is once you're out in the fleet, it's your job, and it's like any job, and you kind of learn to adapt your life around it. And it took him a while to get his feet under him once he got out in the fleet, but now I think he's to the point where he's traveling a little more, he's doing some things. He's embraced, and I think he's definitely making it work for him now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned in the episode as well, just kind of this idea of this separation from your child, dropping them off for Plebe Summer and everything that's going on. How did you, again, now with perspective, how did you navigate and balance the selflessness of kind of letting go and understanding they have to go through this journey, while also staying invested, engaged, attentive, and just a part of your son's life through the experience?
Yeah, that I'll tell you something, Grant. I think that's something I find a lot of parents really grapple with. Is I was very involved with my son's life. Obviously, you're attending all his concerts and all his sporting events, and he's asking you for help with his homework and all that, and then that just switches dramatically. And I think you have to, as a parent, you have to adapt to that. You become, what I've tried to do with no one who's at the academy is you have to become a better listener. And one of the comparisons I've made is you're a dumpster in some ways, right? Especially those first year or two. They have no one to go to. Their roommates are in the same deep pile of garbage that they are. The rest of their squad doesn't want to hear it. The upperclassmen, are just there, are making it difficult. They're the ones making it difficult. Who are they going to go to? Yep. So sometimes you're it. There are times when you get a phone call and it's a half an hour, and you're in a half an hour of them just like unloading all this emotional baggage and garbage, and classes are awful, and my chain of command, they don't care, and all that stuff. And this is something I took from you during our conversation. It's a moment in time. That's just that moment. Because the minute they hang up that phone, I've come to learn, oftentimes they're fine. Oh, the burden is lifted. I no longer have that. I dumped it on my dad, and you're the dumpster. So you have to take this thing and do something with it. And you learn as a parent to process what is really a crisis, what is really something they need help with, and what is just them venting. Because they don't have the, they don't have that escape valve all the time. So you become that. And I think that's something I learned, to be a better listener, to discern what was important, to ask questions. And a lot of times when he was in a decision point, less directive and a lot more just because you have perspective. As when you're at the academy, the pace is so intense. It's so fast.
Rapid.
You don't have time. Yeah, you don't have time to think. So when he was on the phone with me, that's what I thought was my chance to get him to breathe for a minute. And I would just put considerations for him out there. Have you considered this? What about this? Not directive, but just getting that, because he's in that moment. And sometimes, a decision you would probably take an hour to make now, you've got to make in 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
So, right. So you get them to stop and can take those considerations into the mix. And then, let them kind of make the decision from there. I think that really, it took me a while to get there, but I think as he progressed and got to youngster, second class firstie, and he learned too. When he came to a conversation, he'd say, "I've already considered these things. What am I missing?" And it became a more efficient conversation.
Sure. No, I think that's incredible, and that's something that my dad did with me as well, and it's something that parents can do and provide a true value and service to their kids, in my opinion. And the reason being is, like you're saying, because everything is moving so fast at the academy, you generally operate making emotional decisions if you don't take the time to pause, right? And so the number one way to counter emotional decisions is just by pure pausing, and then with logic, right? And kind of like you were saying, it was never logic by statement. It was logic by inquisition, right? And it's how can I ask the questions that are going to make my son or daughter realize what actually is going on and what they need to consider and what they need to process, right? And I tell
Yeah.
this story about Plebe Summer a lot. Obviously, there were a lot of examples through the course of my time at the academy because it
Yeah.
necessarily wasn't my favorite early on. But there were a lot of conversations with my dad where I was like, I just want to go home. Like, I
Yeah.
want to leave. I don't think he's saying like, I want to leave. And he's like, all right, well, let's just take a second. If you leave, what do you want to do? Like, where would you want to go? Right? Like,
Right.
where would you apply to? What do you want to do? You know, I'm just letting you know, again, the school you just mentioned, the application window's closed, right? So if you want to go that route, you're going to have to go to like junior college for a year or whatever in the meantime before you reapply. Because the basketball team's not going to take you mid-year, right?
Right.
Like, you're going to have to wait a year, like a full year. It's not you just going to start up in the semester. And so, you know, there are a lot of things where just simple questions, the simple logic to take away the emotion of it and put ration in logic into the forefront of your brain can be so tremendously helpful, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, that was something that I always found, again, because if you come with statements lead to more emotion, right? You're like, I don't want to hear that,
Yeah.
right? But you know, simple, patient questions can be a lifesaver in these situations, just to get you to pause and really consider all of the different factors that you need to, right? So
yeah, absolutely. You know, Noah had his kind of his dark night of the soul in October. He really started to have that deep, you know, I might be done. And when I said to him, I said, well, here's what I would ask you to think about. What is it that you don't like about being a plebe versus what you don't like about being at the academy versus what you don't think you'll like about being in the fleet? And he thought about it, and we didn't talk about it until Christmas. So it was a good 2.5 months later when he was home for that extended break. And he had given a lot of thought. And he said, well, I think 90% of it's being a plebe. I said, okay, well, it's finite. That means you've got 5 months left of it.
Yep.
You know, if you think the rest of it's worth it, and that's where he kind of, but you're right. It's simple questions, get him to stop, because if it's emotional, they're going to, and again, if you make that declarative statement, well, if they had said, Grant, you should do this, well, now it becomes an emotional back and forth, right? And you're not going to get to the right answer.
Never. Never. And it's something that, again, if you follow Academy, etc., I'm sure you'll see it a lot. It's a theme of mine that, you know, with perspective, I really realized, because I'm so grateful that I decided to stick it out, right? The Naval Academy was the best decision I ever made in my life. And there were multiple occasions where I almost threw that away because I was going to make an emotional decision.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, my number one piece of advice, whenever I talk to anyone about all of this, is to never make a permanent decision based on temporary emotion. That is the number one lesson that I learned during my personal experience in the military.
Yeah.
Because had I made a permanent decision based on my temporary emotion of just being unhappy, and much like you said, which a lot of it was just associated with being a plebe and being away from home and going through the growing pains of adapting to a new way of life, I would have thrown all of this away.
Yeah.
And so that's my number one piece, is never make a permanent decision based on temporary emotion. And I couldn't agree more with the actual questions that you were suggesting and talking about in your experience. I mean, those are the kind of things that provide real value.
Yeah, agreed.
And so, you know, talking about perspective now and taking a step back, looking with perspective at your journey through the Naval Academy, and we'll kind of keep it at the Naval Academy right now.
Okay.
How would you describe your experience as a parent of a Naval Academy midshipman? You know, what would you say are the most difficult aspects of being a parent of a midshipman, but then also the most joy-inducing and positive aspects of your experience, 4-year experience as a parent at the Naval Academy?
I think it parallels the midshipmen's. It's a roller coaster ride. There were some moments of absolute kind of panic and despair. You know, there's a lot of radio silence, which, you know, when you're left alone with your own thoughts, and you nothing good's going to happen out of that. And then there were those moments where, like, I can't believe how amazing this is. And I think that you go along, you start to roll with it a little more. You start to learn how to handle those things. Like I said, you start to understand what's the crisis and what is just that moment in time. So, and it can happen really fast. So I think it was the summer after youngster year, Noah was on a YP going up to Fleet Week in New York City. So, we were in Philadelphia at the time. So we take the train up and we're on the Intrepid. And there you see him, he's captaining the boat, bring it in. He's in his summer whites. You're like, what a great moment this is. Flags are flying. It's sunny. And then we had lunch with him. He's like, this is just, this is everything you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And he goes, hey, listen, I'm having dinner with my friends. Hey, no problem. We had a great time. So we're heading back. And as we're heading back on the train back to Philly, he calls. And he's been put into the honor system. And he's in deep water, right?
Uh-oh. Yeah, that's not
right.
fun.
And so then it's like, so you've gone from this amazing moment where now he's like, oh, Daddy, you don't understand. Like, this could be the end of it. They could kick me out, and and so for like 36 hours, there was this incredible angst hanging over you. And long story short, I want to say it was a misunderstanding. He had everything he needed to show that he was totally off the hook of the whole thing, but you still had to go through the process.
Yeah.
So that you vacillate. That's the kind of thing. But when I think about seeing him at Fleet Week and him going to NOLS, National Outdoor Leadership School in Alaska for 30 days, seeing him play with the Trident Brass and with the orchestra, and then him making the sprint football team. I was there the moment he set his foot on a college football field for the first time, which was a great feeling as his former coach. Being there when they beat, being at St. Thomas Aquinas when they beat Army to win the sprint football title. Those moments you just can't, and you can't replace those. And those are the moments you're like, you understand the gravity of what it means to be an Academy parent.
Yeah, that's incredible. It really is cool, and the separation of all of it and all the amazing things that come with it. And how have you taken that experience from being, a parent at the Naval Academy to now following your daughter's journey at the Air Force Academy? Has it been similar and different? Kind of what did you take from round one and bring it to round two?
Well, the good news is for me as a parent is Kate did a very good job of very quietly. Now she's not like a nonstop talker, but she watched Noah very closely, and she learned a lot, I think, about how he handled himself and what, she kind of learned from some of his missteps. So when she got out there, she knew the drill a little more than he did going in. And I think she was better prepared for that. And as parents, you go into that a second time, what that first summer is going to be like. You're going to get already knew, going to send out the daily messages, going to send out the cards, already had that in place. And, when the phone calls are going to come, be ready for the phone calls. That made the transition for me a lot easier. And I think for her, knowing that first summer was going to be horrible, and she had to do it twice because she went to the prep school. So both summers are awful. But she knew what it was going to be. And, so when it got awful, she knew it was going to be awful, but she knew it was going to end. And she saw how Noah had kind of processed all that. So that really helped an incredible amount, knowing, and it's a different experience. Air Force is a much, much different environment than Navy. Not quite as restrictive. I want to say not as tough, because it's plenty tough, but it's just not as restrictive, I guess is the best way to put it. So I definitely felt like there's a little bit of an advantage there for her. I always felt Air Force is the right spot for her. So I think that we were better prepared. She was better prepared. I was better prepared. And that really made that whole thing a lot more smooth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned, talking about Katie, being very attentive and very aware and almost studying Noah's experience, because early on you talked about Noah's complete lack of preparation for Plebe Summer. He kind of just winged it. He's like, I'll just show up. You're talking about getting asked about the chain of command, and he's like, sir, I'll find out, sir. Like that's not the one you want to find out about when you're supposed to know.
That's what I said. I said they threw him that softball because he said, Dad, I was doing awful. And he said, what's the chain of command? And he said, I'll find out, sir. And the guy's jaw literally dropped. Like, how could you miss the easiest thing ever? Right? So he went in without any prep, got absolutely steamrolled. I-Day was my worst day as a parent. Plebe Summer was a stem to stern, miserable experience. I would say Kate does not want to go through BCT again, but definitely was the intensity coming from her was a lot lower because she did have that prep prep in front of her with
Sure,
Noah.
yeah. And so she did. She kind of learned from that lesson and
Yes.
prepared going into
Yep.
her report day. Or what do they call it
Yes.
at the Air Force Academy?
It's I day. It's an I
Sure.
day induction day.
Okay.
Same type of thing.
Same
But
thing.
yeah,
Oh, great.
yeah. And so the biggest difference I think as a parent is
Hmm.
the Naval Academy really opens its arms to the parents, and they
Yeah.
make you part of the experience. Air Force Academy, much different animals. So at I day, I think Noah's report time was like 8 a.m. So we dropped them at Alumni Hall, said our goodbyes, went back, had breakfast. Then you have the big picnic on Hospital Point, and you met all the parents clubs and all the
Hmm.
things. And then you go into Alumni Hall, and the soup is there, and the commandant is there, and Chet's there talking about athletics. It's all awesome. Then you have that big thing in front of in T court. The Blue Angels fly overhead. It's this great, incredible moment. At Air Force, you pull up, the kid gets out of the car, and that's it. Like, there's no hugs, there's nothing. You wave, and they're gone.
Peace.
Yeah, exactly. Good luck. But so that was just a much, to me, that was a little more jarring. I guess when I read about it, I said, yeah, I understand that, but it's, to go from all that at Navy, and then at Herndon, which is, of course, the capstone to plebe year.
Yeah.
Parents are there, the band is there, people are screaming, it's awesome. And Air Force has what they call recognition, which is a much different animal, but it does end their first year or dually year. And no one, it's a totally insular event, just the cadets, and that's it. So I think for me, that was a bigger adjustment probably than for Kate and Noah, not being as tuned in to, and being as a part of a lot of those events. That was a much different experience for sure. So the lesson I have for the Navy parents is take advantage of that. Like, go to the parents weekend, go to the Herndon climb, every time there's a chance to get on the yard to be involved with something that's happening, make it happen for sure.
Yeah. I feel like that's really interesting because and it's funny because I would consider us like very well versed in like service academy life just by having
Yeah.
gone through it and everything. Is I would just assume that you could basically parallel all three
Yeah.
experiences between, again, West Point, Air Force, Navy, and even Coast Guard.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like, right, they're actually not as similar or
Yeah.
like direct comparisons or parallels as you would
Yeah.
necessarily assume. So that's
It's a lot. It's a lot different. It's a
yeah.
lot different. And we're preparing now for Kate commissions next year.
Mhm.
So, and of course, we lost our commissioning week in 2020, but commissioning week at Navy, it's
That's
like a national
thing.
holiday.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I mean,
Annapolis shuts down for a week. Yeah, you got Blue Angels flying around, everything
right,
shut down. Yeah,
right.
it's a huge event.
You got the moms on Facebook comparing dresses, like that what dress am I going to wear? What's the hat I'm going to wear? And it's a whole week long thing. At Air Force, there's 2 or 3 days, and there's a parade, and then there's commissioning, and there's graduation, and that's the end of it. So it's a much not quite the enormous event out in Colorado Springs as it is in Annapolis.
Sure. Wow. What a time. Well, again, like you're saying,
Yeah.
it's very cool. And for anyone who's already listening to Academy Insider, like that's great. And I'm very excited. But I would encourage you, like you're saying, to take advantage of all of the resource because of the Naval Academy's approach to engaging parents and the community of people who contribute to that, which includes you. And so again, I just kind of want to touch on, for any new parent who may be coming through, I want to give you the opportunity to talk about the book you wrote, Anchored in Tradition, and a little bit more about My Mid the Kid. And is that something that you're continuing to do? Are you still making edits or revisions or updates? And what would you encourage people to look out for? And just give a synopsis of what you're doing with both those things.
Sure. So I started the blog, I want to say it was early in Noah's youngster year, My Kid the Mid, and it really was, for me, it was a catharsis. I was, still incredible amount of stress, trying to adapt to that. And I just started, and I, as a writer by trade, that was just the natural outlet. So, I that has been in existence, and I started one for Kate, mykidthecadet.com. And I have not updated either one of them as frequently as I would have liked. I'll touch on that in a minute. But I then put together Anchored in Tradition, which is really just a research book. And the whole thing that kind of got me started on that is how can you participate in a conversation about the Naval Academy, any conversation with the Naval Academy? So this is a book of trivia, of facts, figures, jokes, you name it, so that if you you can flip to any page, and just start reading. And if someone's talking about the Naval Academy, you'll be able to be a part of the conversation. Yeah. So that was kind of the whole premise there. So what has precluded me from really blogging a lot over the last year and a half has been a new book project, which I just finished the last chapter last night, and starting production on it. And it's Flying High and Diving Deep, and it's a kind of a retrospective of my experience as a two-time military academy parent. I wanted to write something in a more narrative form, so if you read either of the blogs and you like that style, imagine that on steroids. So it's deeper dives into some of those subjects, and again, I just felt it was time to kind of collect all of those thoughts and dive a little deeper into some of them, because I spend a lot of time going into the kids' journey to get there and their time while they're there, and there's some details that I think people will find useful, because what I found from the blog is that people connect with those stories. They connect with it. I've tried to be very real with the blog. We've had our struggles. Noah has struggled. Katie has struggled. I've struggled. We've had some celebrations, and I've tried to be very transparent with that. So I've had a lot of parents reach out to me when their kids are having a challenge. One of the most read pieces on the blog to this day, a mom shared the story of how her son voluntarily left the academy. And she was incredibly honest about it. The son gave her full permission to go ahead and tell the story. And I think that kind of stuff's important. That people, some people on the outside have this belief that once you get that acceptance to the academy, that it's Disneyland. That it's your life now is unicorns and cotton candy, and it's a great honor and it's a great opportunity, but it's hard. And I think to be able to be honest about that has been kind of driving force behind the blogs, and now the book, this new book that's going to be coming out. Sure. So it's been again, my experience has been the parents have been very receptive to the blogs, when I've talked to some folks about the book. They've been very encouraging about it. So I'm excited. I'm excited to get more of the stories out there and to see what kind of feedback I get from that.
No, absolutely. Well, first off, I think the title is awesome. Well executed. Well executed.
Thank you.
But kind of in a similar vein, as we talk about the real personal aspect of your blog, and talking a lot about the relationship dynamic between you and your son and maybe the kid and elsewhere. Is that what we can expect in the book, is a lot of these personal anecdotes? And then second with that is, was your relationship with Noah different than your relationship with Katie based on the two experiences that they had and the differences in the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy journey?
Yeah, so there's a lot of personal experience in the book. I mean, that's really what I wanted to share, was the experience of a Naval and Air Force Academy parent. So yes, I try to very much kind of stay true to that. And it's a great question, Grant, about the nature of the relationship. Noah, look, he was the first. He's the first child, and that means he's the test dummy, right? So we learned a lot of lessons. Learned a lot of lessons from that experience, and the experience with Katie's a little different. Katie and I have. We have a different relationship because she's adopted, and the fact that I went to China and physically took her from there and brought her home, I think that just by that nature, there's a little bit of a different dynamic there. I think the son-daughter thing is a thing. Noah and I we're very close to both my children, but it's definitely a different type of connection. Sure. Katie will call me. And we video chat every week, and she'll call me, tears just streaming down her face, all snotted up about, blah, 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 blah. And then the call will end and she'll send me a message. Thanks, Dad. I feel better. Boom, done. As where Noah would internalize those things a lot more. And, we'd have a lot more of those conversations about me having to spell out considerations and potential consequences. He needed that thought. So with Katie, it's not quite, we don't have to quite get to that because she's used to thinking like that, I think. Sure. So, Yeah, and the experience again at the Naval Academy, I would kind of get upset with Noah if something was happening. He had a solo with the orchestra his plebe year. Thankfully, his sponsor, Mike Kavanaugh, shout out to Mike, great sponsor, captured on video. So they just got to see some of Mike. Noah, what happens? Well, this, that. I'm like, okay. But with Kate, I never have to worry about that because that's just not the way the Air Force Academy is wired, So it's definitely different. It is definitely different.
Yeah. No, and I think I want to take this point to again talk to all the parents that may be listening. It's just your experience with your son or daughter or your loved one, your midshipman, will likely be different than everything that we're sharing as well. And I think I think your case example is perfect. That even between, your two children, right? The two people that you've raised and loved and nurtured, like their experiences were different based on personality type, based on communication style, based on the way they process things, and based on the institution, their experience. And there are so many variables at the academy. What company you're in, who their detailers are, what major they're in, what sport they're a part of. The experiences and the journey can be vastly different. And obviously the baseline foundation is the same, and Plebe Summer is going to be about the same, despite the detailers and the company that you're a part of.
Right.
But there's so many ways that this could go. And so I would just encourage anyone that if you resonate with something that we said, that you reach out and you find mentors in the community and you find mentors in the space, because the large likelihood is there is someone who has a very similar relationship with their son or daughter that can help you through it. But there are also going to be people who have very different experiences through the Naval Academy journey and through other service academy journeys.
I will tell you, Grant, the mantra that I gave to myself very early on was your experience is the right experience. Because I'm reading these Facebook posts and there's just a flood of, this is amazing, my kid's having the best time, he's right where he needs to be, they're so awesome. And I'm thinking, my son's living through hell. Like what academy? And what I found is when I started writing those types of things, parents were responding saying, oh my God, I thought it was just me, I thought it was the only one. And I'm like, no, listen, there are going to be people, and there are some men and women, Grant, and you I'm sure you experienced this, who they dreamed about going to the academy their whole life. They got to the academy and it was everything they ever hoped it would be. And they had 4 years of magic and it's fantastic. And they got exactly what they wanted for service selection. And they're a 18-star admiral now, and good on you. But, there are those that struggle and stumble across the finish line. There was a person in Noah's company, got to come right, company at the academy, who when he went into induction day, said, we got 3 calls. He told his mother, you won't be getting a call from me. I'm going to call my girlfriends, plural. And I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking, if you want to complain that, and, my son spent most of his breaks, winter and spring breaks at home. A lot of them, they go skiing. The one mom said, yeah, I haven't seen my son. My son has been home for this was after a youngster year. My son hasn't been home since I dropped him off at I-Day. That was 2 years. And you know what? That's the experience. So you're right. And I would beg parents to don't get caught up in the Facebook highlight reel. Don't get caught up in everybody having the most amazing time ever. And if you are challenged, struggling, not sure, to find somebody. There was a mom, and I've never asked her if I could use her name, so I won't. But during Plebe Summer, she reached out to me on Messenger, Facebook Messenger, and she held my virtual hand through the next 6 weeks. And I am so thankful. And she just did it because she saw me struggling with some of the posts I was making on Facebook. And we went back and forth, long messages about, this is how it works. This is what you can expect. And because I had no one to turn to because I was the dad, right? I couldn't go to Noah. He was useless. He was, drowning. The rest of my family was looking to me to kind of be the rock. And this woman who I to this day have never met face to face, just, out of the goodness of her heart, held my hand through that. So that you're right, exactly right. There is somebody who's having a very near experience. Look, I know a guy, who was in your class, ended up becoming the XO, I think, was on the basketball team and wrote a note to his mom that said, "I hate this place. I just want to be happy."
Yeah, yeah. That one's, it's ringing a bell. It's ringing. I don't know who that was. I'm not sure who
Yeah,
that was.
I don't want to
but,
get. I'm not trying to get personal, Grant, but
yeah, I'm not trying to
but
disclose secrets or anything.
right.
Yeah. Oh,
But
man.
that is, I think that's the epitome of what it's all about. That
Yep.
everybody's having a different experience. There's this. I think people see pictures of the brigade, and they all look the same, right? Whether they're in their parade uniform or their summer whites, they all look exactly the same. And you think these kids, all 4,000 of them, are ba 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 ba. And you told me once everyone's there for their own reason. Yeah, you're right. And there's 4,000 midshipmen, and there's 4,000 stories and 4,000 experiences. There's not this one brush with which we can paint them all.
Yep.
So your experience is the right experience. If you want to be at every home football game, be there. If you don't. Don't feel like you have to do this or you have to do that. Because some people will feel like it's kind of keeping up with the Joneses. Oh, I have to have a big house for commissioning week. No, you don't. I have to have a fancy dress for the... No, you don't. You don't have to do anything. Whatever works for you is the way to handle it.
It's the way to handle it. And I really appreciate you bringing that up, because as you were talking about it, I was like, oh, like this is, I know I talked about the never make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions, but this is now shifting to like my number one piece of advice for midshipmen as well. And it relates directly to the parents for everything that you just articulated. And I would encourage anyone, if they're listening and they haven't seen my article that I've published and written about my advice for incoming plebes, it's exactly that. I talk about needing to be proud of your reason and to own your experience. And my reason being is you will see those people who, again, it was their dream to come to the Naval Academy. They've wanted to be a Naval Academy midshipman and be a Marine Corps infantry officer or be a Navy pilot or be whatever it may be. Yeah. They've wanted that their whole life. And so when they show up, their reason for coming to the academy is because they love it and they wanted to serve their country and they wanted to do these things and they wanted to achieve this military career. And that is awesome. We need those people. We love those people. They set the standard and they push us forward. But at the same time, not everyone had that same reason, right? These are individuals. And I bring it back to the mission of the Naval Academy, right? And I'll just repeat it because it's been burned into my brain. But the mission of the Naval Academy is to develop midshipmen morally, mentally, and physically and imbue them with the highest ideals of duty, honor, and loyalty in order to graduate leaders who are dedicated to a career of naval service, have potential future development in mind and character to assume the highest responsibilities of command, citizenship, and government at large. That's the mission. The words that I really like to focus on when I tell people about the Naval Academy is exactly this, which is to develop midshipmen, which leads to, in order to graduate leaders who are dedicated to a career of naval service. It's not to find and bring in people who are dedicated to a career of naval service. It's to bring in high character, high performing, highly competent individuals in all arenas, to imbue them with all these ideals and have them ready to become military officers by the time they graduate. And so if that's not your dream, if that hasn't been your purpose, if that's not like your end all be all, that's okay. This is a conversation I had with my company officer over Plebe Summer. He looked at me and he said, Grant, because I was struggling, right? Because I have people in my company who are like, I love this. This is great. This is everything I ever wanted. I have detailers telling me you're not here for the right reason if you didn't come because you wanted to serve your country, right? And I was like, man, like, I wanted to play basketball. It's a great education, right? This is a great school. It's free. Like, there were a lot of reasons that played into my, my reason for coming to the academy. And so I feel like this one is a really interesting thing because I always want to tell people, it doesn't matter what your reason for coming to the academy is or was. You just need to be proud of it. It is your reason. It's not right or wrong. It's just your reason. It just is. It's your experience. How you navigate the academy experience based on that is what matters. And so that's my number one thing. I encourage you to read the article that I wrote because I had time to actually process my thoughts and put it into, actual verbiage that makes sense. But it's exactly that, which is the mission of the academy is to develop midshipmen,
Yeah.
to develop these people. There are other commissioning sources. If you look at the mission of OCS,
Yeah.
it's quite literally to screen, right? We're screening for
Mhm.
people who already have these things. That's not the mission of the Naval Academy. The
Yeah.
mission of the Naval Academy is development. We are here to
Yeah.
develop. We are here to teach, coach, and mentor highly capable, highly competent, highly motivated young men and women and get them ready to become leaders who are dedicated to a career naval service.
Yeah.
And so if that's not right now, if that's not the experience they're having as a plebe, that's okay. That transition happened for me while I was at the academy. My plebe experience and first experience, completely different. My attitude and mentality and mindset between my plebe year and my first year are completely different. And so I just encourage every parent who may be out there, who may be listening, who may be having a hard time, like, this is part of the process.
Mhm.
And there's no one reason, there's no exact what it has to be. Like you said earlier, these are 4,000 individuals, 4,000 human beings who have come together, and there is a baseline foundation, and there is a process, and there is a machine that's going to develop them and have them ready for exactly what they need to do, because it doesn't have to be who you are. It may just be what you do is being a military officer. And so yeah, just take a deep breath and realize that there are so many experiences that are the right experience. And it is the right experience because it's your experience. And as long as you choose to attack it and embrace it and just go with it, you will be successful, and it will work out. So
I could not agree more, Grant. 100%. 100%.
I appreciate it. Sometimes I get on, it's my number one topic. I get on a rant sometimes with that one. So I'm sorry.
I emphasize that to parents all the time because it's easy to get caught up in the stereotype, right? I mean, that this is how your midshipmen should be living their life, and this is how you as a parent should be living your life. And you know what? That there is no one size does not fit all. And I think that you can't repeat that enough.
100%. All right. Well, with that being said, I know you had mentioned someone who had made a really positive impact on your experience as a midshipman parent.
Yeah.
You know, a theme that I've taken into season 2 of the Academy Insider podcast, again, with perspective, is the power of simple actions, the power of one person just taking simple actions and the immense positive impact that can make on someone. And so, you know, like you're saying, it was one person reaching out and literally just sending a Facebook message to you because they saw your experience and how that dramatically changed your experience. Right. And so I just want to ask one time here and give you an opportunity to shout someone out if you want to. Who's someone who made a positive impact in your life during your time as a midshipman parent?
Yeah. So I'll give you a couple names. One, Marnie Kelsey, who has had multiple kids as I have go through the academy. She helped me near in the end of my Navy Academy experience, but also as Katie transitioned to the Air Force Academy, super helpful. She also is one of the 3 folks behind the Academy Travel Network, which I encourage Academy families to take advantage of. Mike Cavanaugh, who I mentioned, our sponsor. What a difference a good sponsor can make, Grant. Mike was right. My kids have been super lucky. Mike was amazing. He attended all the musical events I couldn't make. He attended all the sprint football games I couldn't make. No needed poster board. Mike was dropping it off at the yard. He just a tremendous asset. And as I'm kind of turning the corner here towards the end of my military academy time, Susan Weisberg, who's the author of the Chester Midshipmouse books, I really got to a point when I was working through this latest book where I was really having a lot of doubts. And Susan is another person I've never met in person. She's been on my Herndon playlist. We've spoken on the phone. We've traded emails. But she read a couple of the things I wrote, and it was just very encouraging. And I'm not convinced I could have gotten this book across the finish line if it weren't for her. And I will say, to your point, I've had a number of parents. I had one during Katie's last year, during Katie's 3rd class year, who reached out to me. Son was really, really struggling, and just couldn't get that one victory. You need that one little win to get you over the hump. And so we talked a lot, and I talked her through a couple things, and sometimes just listened. And at the end, things worked out really well, and we ended up I guess I can say this now. We went to one of the all academies balls in the Cleveland area, and son did amazing. So it really reaching out and just find one little thing, a little message. You'd be surprised how that can really help you get through a very difficult spot and really improve your experience immensely.
Well, thank you for that. And
Sure.
as we get ready to wrap up here after an incredible
Mhm.
episode 1, I just want to say thank you so much again for taking the time
Oh,
to be here. But 2 is